Hey, great people. Thank you for joining us. I am Chidi Akunna.
And I'm Victor.
Hey, have you seen the first of the series? We've been on a series titled Navigating the Parenting Journey. It's been a great time so far, and you want to meet the guest we have today. She's got so much to say. I tell you. Okay, so last week we had Isata, who talked about ages 0 to 5.
Yes.
And I mean, I learned so much personally from that session. So if you haven't seen it, you may want to see that and then come back to see this,
one.
or see this and then see that
Yeah,
later,
either way
whichever
works.
way, either way works, right? But there's so much to glean from the experiences of these great women who will be taking us through the month of March as we just, look into motherhood and the challenges, the excitement, and the wins for these lovely people. I'll let you say something.
Well, let me just say why you need to watch this. It was so raw, it was so
Oh,
authentic.
yeah. Yes.
It was so a lot of concepts. I mean, positive parenting. Most time people come into parenting from a negative point of view, saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. You're not thinking about what do you want to do? What kind of a man do you want to raise? What kind of a girl do you want to raise? What kind of a woman do you want to raise? You have to decide that. Think about it from a positive point.
Yes.
You need to see it.
Yes, you need to see Dr. Amara Amaugo. Oh, she was so phenomenal. Let's jump in. Let's jump in. Let's have let's let them in on what we have experienced. Really, really beautiful. Yay! We are live, and we have with us the wonderful Dr. Amarachi Amaugo. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so glad to have you on board.
Welcome on board.
Oh, thank you, people. It's amazing. I didn't know we're live.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, thank you for having us. Please, can you introduce yourself? Our audience would like to know who you are.
Okay, my name is Amara Amaugo. I'm a beautiful wife to an amazing man, gospel, and I'm also an amazing mom to Emmanuel. I I think it's really important to make that introduction because we are talking about parenting today.
Absolutely.
So yes, I'm a woman that wears a lot of hats. Career-wise, I'm a lecturer at the university here in the UK. And it's been an amazing journey for me being an immigrant here and, of course, having my child here. And that's sort of very different from my upbringing and the challenges I was able to face here. And I'm sure that's some of the things we'll be delving into today. So, yes, that's me in a nutshell. I co-host with my husband on Relationship Builders Forum. And this is a forum where we talk about relationship, we talk about sex, we talk about love, and we help to build singles and married and empower them to live and fulfill their best in their relationship.
Wow. I'm so excited already. You're touching on some parts, critical points we will be, drawing from. And thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. You're welcome.
Thank
So
you.
are we good to go?
We're good to go. I'm ready.
Let's do this. All right. So in 3 words then, how would you describe your parenting journey?
Wow. In few words, that's a daunting task, I would say, because there's quite a lot for me to say about my parenting journey. But in a few words, I would say it's been exciting. It's been invigorating. It's been a welcome challenge, I would say. It is. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's in a few words, but there's quite a lot to unpack, but in a few words.
Yes, we would like you to unpack that. I think you used some very strong words there. We would like you to break down a bit.
So which one of them? I would say
invigorating. I like invigorating.
Invigorating. I'd use the word invigorating because look, sometimes you have no energy. Like you know what, as a parent, sometimes you're like going, and you get to a point where you feel like, phew, I'm exhausted. And then you got, a little man who sort of you get that sort of energy from them. And I would say that it's been invigorating for me, because moments where I feel like I don't have any other energy, I don't have any, strength in me to go on, but somehow I find that strength to keep going on. And that's what parenting has done for me. It has helped me to stop being focused on myself and just, appreciate somebody else. And for me, it's invigorating because it presents to me an opportunity to shape somebody's destiny, And for me, it's truly invigorating in that way, because I don't know what experience can actually give me that. And parenting has given me that. And I'll say humbling as well, because I'm responsible for someone. I'm helping to make certain decisions that would shape that person's, life in whatever shape or form going forward. So yes, it's challenging in that way, because you're constantly thinking about, I don't want to make mistakes. I want to be sure I'm crossing all the T's, I'm dotting all the I's. But yes, invigorating, I would say. Yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. I like the way you explained how, even though you sometimes find yourself you're exhausted, but once your child comes, there is this energy that you can't explain where it comes from. That you just have to swing to that person. That's why they call women super moms. Super moms, and it's a very important skill. And another thing I also like that you said is that playing a part in shaping someone's destiny.
Yeah.
Playing a part, because if you talk about family being the smallest unit of a society, in other words, parenting is not beyond raising an individual, is shaping a society. The society we're going to live in the next 5 years, next 10 years, parents are playing critical roles in this. So we are actually nation builders by extension. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So what would you say has been the most rewarding moment for you as a mother?
Rewarding. Well, I would say there are a number of moments that have been rewarding. I would say, first of all, the moment I had the opportunity to hold that little one, for me, that was wow. It was, I don't know how to explain the feeling, because it's only something that one can experience. So for me, just having that and just being in that moment, it was as if time stopped for me. So yes, I would say from the very start, it started being rewarding for me. But again, something that I really found rewarding is having to watch the different phase, the different journey, the different milestone that the child had to make. So say, for example, from raising the head and holding it up, to crawling, to making the first sound, to seeing the first smile. For me, it's been amazing. And seeing them learn how to talk, learn how to navigate their steps and falling. Also seeing them, potty training. For me, it was new, and I just felt that, watching somebody hit their milestone at that moment, that you see that this child is really vulnerable, it's for me rewarding. And now, I'd say he's a young dude now. So, of course, seeing him change from a very wanting mommy, cuddle and all of that, to kind of independent young man, so to speak, although not that quite independent, but at the space where I want certain things, I don't want certain things. And now we're having this conversation around, should I grow my hair afro, or should I, have a haircut? So it's that, and I find it really rewarding that I am in that space and in that moment, observing and seeing those things and, contributing in my own little way. So yes, it's rewarding. Just being responsible for another human being. I don't know what it is, but it comes with its own challenges, I must say. But
of course.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think one of the things that jumped out at me is how the smile on your face, that you were reliving the different milestones.
You have that smile.
That smile. as you were reliving more like the different milestones, how you was able to, you know, move from this point to you talk about potty training, which is a huge thing for a lot of parents. You know, I remember we were at a particular seminar and someone was saying they were trying to potty train the child. They nearly, what was the word she used? She said
she lost her cool.
She lost her cool. She said they nearly traumatized the young man,
yes, because, that was the word.
because they were constantly watching. So it just put a smile on my face. But what will you say to parents who don't enjoy those milestones because they are constantly panicking about the next thing, about the next thing, about the next thing?
To be, I don't know what to say. I mean, now just reflecting back, I kind of wondered, why was I worried about that? You see, the thing is, we need to learn to enjoy the journey. It might not, I know as parents, and particularly as an African mom, I'll be very specific. Sometimes we look out for perfection. And the fact that we're embedded in certain society, culture, and we have a knack for minding other people's business or putting our, you know, just contributing to other person's business, whether asked or no asked, or not asked. And sometimes it has a way of putting us under pressure because it's like, is your child speaking now? Oh, how old is he? Why is he not speaking? Is your child potty trained? Why is he still putting on pull-ups? He shouldn't be putting up pull-ups, you know, all of that. And we want our children to hit those milestones and tick the boxes and the perfection in all of that. But you know what? I say sometimes we get hung up on that and we miss that experience. We miss the moments, you know, with the kids. And I just feel we just need to relax because you know what? Life is in phases. And if your child is not meeting that milestone when you think your child should be meeting that milestone, I think you need to enjoy that child and supporting that child to be able to meet that milestone and not just being worried about the stigma and the label that the society is going to put either on you as a mom not being perfect or not doing your job, or on the child not meeting the milestone. And I think this is one of the challenges that we face because a lot of times we trying to grapple with what the society is putting on us and our own ability as a mom. So I'd say, you know, research whatever it is, you know, you find challenging. Of course, do your research and don't be at the point where you're projecting your fears on your child. Because sometimes in the bid to solve the problem, our child can actually see through us, our decisions and our you know, the steps that we're taking is fear driven. You know, we're kind of anticipating things, and it is not supposed to be like that. You know, I know that in the heat of the moment and as things are going on, it's not, you know, my advice might be not right, but to be honest with you, just looking back and retrospectively, I used to wonder why I was so worried. For instance, you gave an instance about potty training. You know, I was so worried about it. You know, I would sit my child on the toilet for hours and hours, you know, like literally you have to pull. You have to do number 2. You have to do number 1. And being a little boy, you know, number 1 has to be done standing up and number 2 has to be done. So it's sometimes, you know, sometimes he doesn't hit the target and I'm worried why he's not hitting the target. Now he's messed up the wall. He's messed up everywhere. I have to clean everything and all of that. And your child is actually feeding off your emotion. He's feeding off your emotion, whether you like it or not. Your children will be feeding off that emotion. Look, it's not that hard. You know, children sometimes they're just playful. You can't anticipate perfection, and it's okay. It's okay.
Awesome. I think you pulled on our emotions there.
Yeah.
we need to take some time to think about this, you know, and the journey, how we faring, how are our children. I think that was something you were speaking to. How are your children faring? You know, you're parenting them. How do they feel about what you're passing on? How you're coming across as a mom? You know, that's really important.
Fantastic.
Wow, thank you.
I just
feel that more? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something. Just as she was speaking, something came on my mind, and that's around support. So we find ourselves in spaces where we can easily draw from the support system. But a lot of times, as a result of what I spoke to earlier on, the stigmatization or the labeling, some moms who are struggling might not be forthcoming in saying, look, I need a bit of help, or I need a bit of support in this regard. And that's just because once they open up that doorway, it feels like you are giving somebody the liberty to just be in your business. It's not than it's supportive and, just being there and just being that listening ear. And if you've got any valid advice, and I use the word valid, then you can offer that. But, I would say that support is great, in the right places, right? So there are two things. So either seeking for support and then you're being stigmatized as a result of the support, or the fact that you're just ashamed of stepping out and seeking the support. And I think that we should be, building that community where we support ourselves more, because what is peculiar to us might not be peculiar to others. And that was something I felt I should add.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you earlier, I was going to say, is there something you wish you knew when you were starting out your journey? Something you wish you would have made a difference? Say, I wish I knew this.
Wow. There's so many things. I would say so many things. Just reflecting now, I kind of sobered a bit, because there's so many things I wish I knew. But you know what? Parenting journey, there is so much you can know and there's so much you can read about, because the journey in itself, it's something I would say and term uncharted territories. Things could happen that you necessarily did not read up, or you were not prepared for. But I think one of the things that I would have benefited from would have been more positive parenting, just sharing positive parenting tips rather than negative parenting tips, which I think it was something that I was seeing more often. And, people weren't sharing a lot about, how can you turn this negative positively, or how can you do it differently? And it was just after I had, my child, that I started, speaking to myself, first of all, reflecting on what was it about my parenting, my being parented, if there's a word like that I didn't quite appreciate, and what can I possibly do differently now, and looking out for, how to turn whatever, experience that I didn't quite appreciate on its head, and seeing what I could do. And the other thing I wanted to say is the fact that human being is very different. Because a lot of times we want to parent because we think we understand the child and we know the child, but every child is different. And it's, you just have to work with day by day basis and what you know. And of course, research about the child, finding out about the child's love language and all of that. And I wish I was exposed to more information around positive parenting. Like I know now, I wish I did that, because that would have given me a different perspective on how to handle certain things, or how to handle, for example, when a child is moody, for example, which tends to happen as a result, maybe not because of me, but because of what they experience at school. And, how to question the child, things like, because sometimes when we question a child, it feels like the child feels attacked. And, it's about the wording, it's about getting the child, to know that you care. I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that every child would always want affirmation. In fact, children feed off affirmation. That's the way they're wired. I know that, but I didn't know that the way I know it now in terms of my awareness about it. And the fact that it is great for me to affirm my child. I'm not spoiling my child if I am affirming what the child is doing right. And I think that sometimes, you know, being raised from a different culture, we have this sort of, we're wired in a way that we feel don't spoil the child with excess affirmation, so to speak. So I don't think there's anything like excess affirmation.
Mm.
The other thing I wanted to speak about, which I have learned about, I've actually studied, and I'm still immersing myself in it now, is around how I affirm a child. So yes, affirmation, but how do we affirm a child? So from a culture where I was raised, it's always outcome oriented. So my affirmation is based on what I've done. So I do something and it's always, wow, well done, you've done that. So I found later on, and this was just in the course of parenting journey, that I also realized that I struggled with the same things. And I wish I knew this, you know, where when I didn't get that well done, I felt I'm not any good, right? And that's just because I have been wired and conditioned to be affirmed based on an outcome, right? And I started now to realize that with my child, I shouldn't be more focused on affirming him just because he's done something great. And it's about affirming the process. So I'm more intentional about conditioning him, because I think it's really important in life that we get our children to understand that it's about the process. It's not just about the outcome. So when he's done something, I'm not saying, oh, well done for completing that task. I'm asking him, okay, so how do you feel whilst you were completing the task? How does that make you feel? And then I'm affirming the process of completion and not the completion itself, not the project itself. And this is something I wish I knew, because they have been wired and conditioned by you've affirmed the outcome time and time again, and now they're adult, they're so keen about, I have to crush that goal, I have to do that, I have to achieve that, I have to achieve that. And now they're not focused on learning the process, and that's why it hits their confidence when something is not what is expected in terms of the outcome. But then if you teach the child that it's okay, because it is all down to the process. You have learned something, you're becoming better, you're becoming good at this, you're becoming great at this, and not necessarily about the end result.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
I really like the way you emphasize the process.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because that is where we form character. That is where we form, that is where we develop some traits. Because I realize success doesn't really change much about you. It's that process that really truly changes it. You know, I remember I read a book some years ago about quality management. And this guy, I think it was something Crosby, and he was talking about, before then, the thinking was just focus on the end goal, you know. And so what happened was that when they produce something, they've noticed that the end goal sometimes has a lot of defects. So the guy turned things around and say, well, why not focus on making sure that every part of the process is stellar, it's crystal. So that automatically reduces the defects at the end of it. So you don't wait till the end to see how things are going to turn out. You know how they will turn out if you put the processes in place. And this is, it sounds so small, but this is so powerful in terms of helping people to be able to manage their emotion when the outcome. Sometimes you may not have the outcome you want, but the person you have become through the process is more powerful, and it will position you to get a better outcome in the much not too far away future. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, you were speaking as well when you talked about positive parenting. I just thought to myself, oftentimes we tend to focus on what we do not want. I don't want this, but we do not realize that that's where we will be going if we focus on that. Yeah, what you focus on is what becomes later. All right. So I appreciate that you brought that up. So we need to focus on the positive parenting. Thank you. Thank you. You're dropping gems. Thanks. All right. Now, so let's focus on your experience as a mom between the ages for your child between the age of 5 to 10. What challenges have you encountered in this phase? And if you had to do it all over again, what would you do different?
Okay, so wow, that's a very good question. Now, I had a child who was a fussy eater, and sometimes, again, back to what we're saying about the outcome, we want the child to eat. But if we can understand that it's not just getting the child to eat, because sometimes it's the end result, right? But it's about how we get them to eat. And for me, I learned a lot in that process because my child was very fussy eater. There were certain things he would like to eat and eat and eat and eat again if you keep putting it in front of him. And there were certain things that it's a no-no. He wouldn't touch it, right? And in that whole process, I started thinking, because at the point it was like, it was a bit challenging for me having to experiment different things. And, I'm limited for time. Of course, being a full-time mom, working mom, and, I'm not a full-time mom, but full-time career, and of course, a mom, and other things. I wear different hats. And I felt, oh, having to prep this, and then tomorrow he's not going to eat it. And then next day he's not, I have to come up with something different. And you know what? I just decided to take a break from it. So that was one of the problems that I had. I don't know if I should go into talking about the solutions of how I was able to navigate that, but should I?
Yes, please.
Okay, so what I tried to do then was to take a pause because it was wearing me out. And I started to incorporate eating into our playing. I started, experimenting on textures, and this was something I read about. Sometimes children like crunchy, they don't like mushy stuff, they don't like, things that are a bit soft. So I started experimenting. For example, I would take pasta, for example, and I'll put food coloring, and I'll put some green, some yellow, some, and all of that, and it will kind of make a rainbow on a plate. And that way he was picking it, although it's been cooked, but he feels it's a plaything. Now, let me say here that it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work because he could eat that pasta today, and then the next day when I do exactly the same thing, he's not going to touch it, right? So it took a lot of work for me. And it was just about, also going out, taking him on some children day center, for example, see what they eat, because sometimes your child, you would offer him something at home, he wouldn't eat it, and then you take him out, the exact thing, I don't know, maybe it's the taste or maybe it's the environment, I don't know, but he will now begin to eat those things, and you'll be like, I just offered you that at home and you did not even touch it, and they would be eating it. And it's just that whole thing that got me really. And sometimes as parents, sometimes we want to eat certain things and we expect our children will eat certain things. And for my child, he wasn't eating those things. So being an African, there were things you would expect your child to eat, but he wasn't eating that. So I started to experiment, and I started asking other people, and they were giving me some ideas on what they did and how they were able to hide things, into food. Things like, he wouldn't touch fish, and he wouldn't eat protein, meat and all of that. And I started finding out ways to incorporate that. So that was one of the challenges I faced, really, because of course you needed to have your child eating well. Of course, that was one of the milestones they would need to tick. How does he eat? The other thing was around socializing. So that was a big for my child. And that's just because of the whole situation at the time. So I was in between jobs, and it required just me at the time, just being a single mom, not not in reality, but I was living away from my husband. And I was living in a place where, it was pretty much chilled out. Now, what really happened was I was work focused, work, just dumping in the light in a nursery, go to work, pick him up, put him back, put him in front of an iPad or put the YouTube, whatever it is, just because I needed space to think. I needed space to breathe. Now, I didn't realize that, over time, he got used to just doing his own thing, cracking on his own. And finally, when I relocated to somewhere else, I put him in a different nursery, and they were like, he likes to do his own thing. He likes to play by himself. He doesn't like to interact with other children. I was like, I said, is that a bad thing? I said, no, a child being focused for a prolonged period of time, just doing something and doing it diligently is not normal. I was like, that's another label. How would you label my child like that? What if it's different? And I went back and forth and back and forth. And maybe some parents might be listening to this and they're in that same space where, you've been given certain sort of, your child is not meeting this milestone in terms of socializing. And for me, it was big at the time. So what I decided to do was then taking him out for more activities. I tried to engage with with the providers and the stakeholders at the time. What can I do to change the situation? And they started giving me tips about how to engage him, tips for interacting with other kids, because that was something they wanted to see. And it took a lot of patience. And I say, look, no mom would be happy and would welcome and embrace that news with open hands and arms. So it took a lot. It's a hard pill to swallow. But at that point, I was focused on what do we need to do? What's the process on how we achieve the outcome? And that was how I was able to engage. And of course, it required me spending more time with my child, and I started getting into the habit of taking him out every single weekend, just because I needed him to see how we get on the bus, how he comports himself, how we go out there, things like that. And I always take him to play dates, of course, with people from church, and that was something that I was able to do to support him a bit more going forward. The other thing was around speaking. So they'd say, oh, he doesn't have enough, he doesn't use a lot of vocabularies, right? He doesn't use a lot of that. We'd expect at this age he would be using, and they were counting the number of vocabularies. Of course, they had the charts that they showed me. And it was something that I found like, what do you mean? He's communicating, saying, oh, yeah, he's communicating, but it's like it's repetitive. He's repeating what you're saying, but does he understand what you're saying? So it was now all of that. And it was like, but he understands what I'm saying. So, okay, he might understand what you're saying because he repeated it so much that he is only in his mind has been capturing that sort of, yes, I know what mom is saying. But if I were to ask him a question and he were to use his own words, would he be able to interpret that? Okay, now I get it. So now it was now at the point where he needed to read a book and retell the story in his own words and not repeating what he has read. So that was another hurdle that we had to cross. And it's like, well, he understands what he's saying, and as a mom, you want to see your child to be perfect. He understands what I'm telling him. He understands what I'm reading. No, he doesn't understand. He's only repeating what he has read. So, and it was so difficult for me. But at the point I started working with them, and they had this school club. And they say, okay, we would introduce him to school club, but of course you have to read with him and then ask questions like, okay, what was happening in the story? Or what did you take from the story? And things like that. And it took a lot of work, a lot of patience, because sometimes I would ask my boy these questions and he's so blank. And he's repeating the same thing. And no, you know what? It's there. The answer, you want to say it. You want to push him. You want to make him. But then you have to hold back because you don't want to knock his confidence. And for me, that was so challenging. I mean, this is something that is so personal, but I know that a lot of people there would benefit from this, because a lot of times we just give up. And we always look at our child not performing as a reflection of us underperforming. It's not your fault. Wherever your child is, it's not you. It's not dad. It's not, it's not whoever. It's not, you might be a carer and you've got that child, or you've adopted a child and you feel like, oh, this was not what I anticipated for. Because if it were to be my own child, maybe the child wouldn't turn out this way. It's okay, because every child has got their own journey. And it's what the child would need from you is patience, and just give them that thumbs up, nudge them on, and cheer them on, because you are their biggest fans. You are the biggest cheerleaders. And that's all they need from us. They need a safe environment just to feel safely and navigate that space. And trust me, as they develop, you would forget what it felt like, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Like, I'm beginning to forget, because asking that question, I was just having to recollect on what it felt like, because now my child is almost 8. And I really don't recall, I recall them, but not in a way that I felt when it was happening at the time. So patience is key. Patience is key. And just don't let that child see or sense any trace of disappointment from you. Children can read. They can read your expression. Even when you feel you're expressionless, they can read the room. So just don't make them feel like, oh, I give up, or that sense of, exasperation or whatever it is, because it can knock their confidence. So just cheer them on, because we are their biggest cheerleaders. And that's why God has given, because we are capable. And that's why he has positioned that particular child for you to take care of.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Fireworks.
Fireworks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, you went down, you went deep. And I really appreciate the examples you shared. 3 things that stuck out for me as you spoke: patience, persistence, and love. Patience, persistence. You've got to do the work as well as a mom. So I think I really celebrate the action, the effort you put into it as well. You didn't just relax like, oh, okay, it's a verdict you've been given. You put in the work, and with a lot of love. I really like that. That stuck out for me, and that's my take home.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What would you say to new moms who are just, people who are, you are way ahead in terms of your child's state. What would you say to young moms who are just starting the journey? What advice would you just, like 3 pieces of advice?
Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is that it's nerve-wracking. When you think about being a mom, it could be nerve-wracking. But I always think about it like, where you're preparing to go out there and present something, or do something and accomplish something. If you don't have the right knowledge, the right skills, the right capabilities, you'll be even more nervous. So I'd say, to begin with, you need to educate yourself. And when I say education, I'm not saying go get a degree for parenting, but I don't think there's any. If there's any, anyways, your child could be very much different for whatever degree, because one thing for you to have the theories, but another thing to be able to see practice. So you need to be able to educate. So, what we're talking about, conversations like this, just listen, and, reach out to people like Victor and Chidi. Reach out, to other moms as well, people who can support you. Just know as much as you can. I always say that no knowledge is a waste. You can never know too much. You can never know too much. So find out all you know. Don't just say, I'm just going to fake it until I make it. Don't do that. You are responsible for another human being, for another destiny. And you are going to be the one that is going to be piloting that. So God has seen you capable of doing that. Do not allow that child to have a detour. So you can't fake it until you make it. So you need to get some knowledge. You need to embed yourself in circles where you're able to feed positively, positive information. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. And, there's also the issue around discipline. How do you discipline your child? But maybe that's something for another day. We're going to have that conversation. But you also need to understand that knowledge is powerful. So know as much as you can. Do not isolate yourself. Okay, always find the right community. You cannot embed yourself in every community, but there's always a right community for someone. Find that community where you can feed up positive vibes. All that positivity. I'm not saying that because some people say, oh, Amara, you can be very unrealistic. Oh, sorry. Negativity doesn't do anything to me. So positive attitude, positive vibes. Whoa, let's go. Let's do it. So I'm more about that. Yeah. So look out for communities where you can, function, you can embed yourself in. And I would say that whatever knowledge you have before you embark on the journey, it's not final. Knowledge is progressive. Learning is progressive. So you also need to keep learning. And let me say that if you have had any childhood traumas, it is really important that I state this point. If you have had any childhood traumas, you need to speak to a counselor. It's really important. If you realize how much damage some parents don't even have any business being parents, if you know how much damage we project on our kids due to unresolved traumas, you would not believe, the fact that someone has grown up and is just going to replicate the same trauma. You've just passed on that trauma to that person. So I would say, speak to a counselor, make sure you deal with that. Make sure you become whole. Make sure you're parenting from a place of wholeness, not a place of brokenness. It's really important. I would state that because some of us don't even realize that we have it until we have a child that triggers something from our past, right? And trust me, it's happened to me as well. I'm not saying I'm walking around traumatized, but the thing is, I was exposed to certain ways of disciplining a child, and I didn't realize I've been wired that way. So when I was met with that situation firsthand, the software hidden way back many years ago just came to the fore. And I swung into action. The whole laying of hands and legs, the whole African thing. And I would always say that this is lazy parenting. You cannot afford to lazy around in your parenting. Default mode, you do things because you've been wired that way. There are more effective way of parenting your child, and I think you need to be looking at this. Positive parenting is huge. Is massive. Something I have been studying. I've been immersing myself in the literature. I've been trying to see how that works in practice. I've been also reaching out to so many people who are in that space. And that's something that I think we should be singing more about. We should be talking more about these days, especially for people within our community. Because I've seen massive changes in the way and the manner and the style of my parenting now than what it was like 2 years, 3 years ago. I'm very different. And the other thing I would also want to add is reflect. Always pause and ponder. Always pause and ponder. For every, you can make it like a weekly thing, just pause and reflect of how has it been. And if you're going in as a parent, just do that. Have a habit of doing that. It's really helpful because then you can quickly make amends of what you haven't done well the week before or the month before. And the other thing I would want to say is have a habit of journaling. Okay, just journal. You might be in meetings like this, conferences like this. You say, "Oh, I've heard it." Remember that your mind cannot store up everything. So journal it, because a day is coming where you'll be like, I think I saw something that could possibly help me. Have a journal, a parenting journal. Okay, document your thoughts, document what your thoughts were before. Okay, because it might be very helpful when you have that child to go back and see all the positive vibes you had before you had the child. Because you not get to the point where, this child, I feel like laying hands, legs, everything on you. I want to just, shape you into existence, remold you. God has molded you, but I want to remold. You go back to that journal and you see what you actually said about that child. It kind of brings back that positive mindset you had in the course before you embarked on that journey. So I'd say it's good. I wish I did. I wish I journaled my pre-parenting journey, but I did it. Well, but now I'm trying to journal my now parenting journey because I know definitely that my child is going to grow up and I want to see what it like, as we go the milestones. So I don't know if that was helpful, but that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like the part of reflecting, because sometimes we don't realize that we've been here before, and you can draw a lot of wisdom from your own life when you reflect. And it's so powerful. You sit down and say, okay, how did I handle this? What could I have done different? You'll be shocked that within your own life, it's a lot of wisdom that is already there playing out. Just that it's not at the conscious level, it's at the subconscious level. So you just do them more like an auto response kind of situation. And I also like the concept of journaling. It's a good way of clarifying your thoughts, clarifying your value system, and it makes you really solid. So when you believe something, it's so crystal clear why you believe it and why you are doing something, because you've been able to clarify your thoughts through writing. Really, really good.
Okay, I think to wrap this up, what would you say has been the most important lesson you have learned as a mother? I know you've said a lot. There's been so much packed into all you shared, right? In fact, there were questions we wanted to ask you about the high moments, the high points, the exciting moments. I think you touched on those. But then you may want to also slip them through your response this time. But what has been the most important lesson you've had?
Most important lesson is that I think this is humbling. I have to say this, that I am capable of learning from my child.
Awesome. Awesome.
You know, the thing is, and I want to really say this slowly so that whoever is going to be listening to this, they need to really realize we come with a mentality in parenting that we know it all. We come with a mentality, which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's great to know something and, drive it and be at the forefront. But having a child has also shown me that there are aspects of me that needs work, that needs changing. And I think for me, most importantly, is the humility to accept that I need to change it because I've heard it from a child. Is that humility to acknowledge that, this, for a child to spot this, Amara, you need some work. And this is a gift, I would say. Some of the parents might see it differently, but for me, it's a massive gift. And I don't understand how, even when I'm just thinking about something and somebody has maybe pointed that out to me, that on the play, for my child to repeat it to me without missing words, very strong, like an adult is speaking through the lips, the little mouth. And I just cannot really imagine how that plays out. For me, that's been rewarding. That's rewarding because motherhood has opened up my eyes to the things that I need to reform in myself. Because it's just, and it's not a journey that I anticipate what's going to happen the next second, right? To some extent, you can anticipate it, but there are certain things that could just, you need the on-the-spot decision, right? On-the-spot speech. And it's taught me as well the reflection, to reflect before I say. And it's done that in ways that I really am so grateful to God. I'm so grateful to God because sometimes, it's one thing to hear something from your spouse, but then another thing to hear it from your child who is not even 10 yet. And it's amazing how that happens. So for me, it is one of my high moments, if I should say that. And I always experience this every day. The other thing is to be a part of somebody's life is huge. A lot of times we talk about being a part of people's weddings or people's birthdays, and it's just one huge event. But imagine that you are a whole part of somebody else's project until they're an adult and they can make their own decision. That for me is scary, but also at the same time, it's a privilege. And I cannot ask for more. I cannot ask for more. It's just an opportunity to see, it's like God is giving an opportunity to create, and you're shaping your, of course, with the God's guidance, of course, because you don't want to derail the child and get the child to live your vision and not their vision, right? Because that's another thing or discussion for another day. So you just, asking, and it's so amazing to see how they unravel, how they surprise you. And most times for me, it's just me patting myself on the back. Of course, I know I didn't do it all, because if the child had said, no, I'm not going to go that way, mom, what can I do? But it's just rewarding to see that there is a good outcome, right? The process wasn't wasted. It wasn't a waste of my time. So for every time a child hits a significant milestone, I celebrate the child and I celebrate myself.
Awesome.
And the other thing is creating that enabling environment has been amazing. Getting to see them play, getting to see them grow, getting to see them cry, getting to see them make mistakes. It's wonderful. So I like I said, I emphasize more positive parenting, and I'm not being unrealistic about how I go about it. I'm not saying that there are no challenges, but it's all down to perspective. And this is how, for me, this is how I keep thriving, not coping, because I don't cope in my parenting. I'm thriving. And my child is thriving as well. Because some people say it's a coping mechanism, but it's not. So it's been an amazing journey. And I just want to thank you, Chidi and Victor, for giving me this wonderful opportunity just to share my heart. I kind of shared from a place of, I don't know, there's quite a lot I shared today, but I'm so happy that I was able to do that.
Thank you so much, man.
It's been amazing.
It's been amazing. I think parenting is something you don't do from afar. You have to be actively involved, and it shows in the way you talk that you're coming from a point of, this is what I've lived through. These are my learning points. These are things I have to learn. These are the adjustments I have to make. So thank you so much for your time. You know how busy you are to be able to do this, and you'll be shocked how something or one or two or three things that you said can shift the trajectory of somebody's parenting for life. And you'll be so amazed how something someone just said, you know what, I'm going to do this differently, can just create a different process and a different outcome for a young man that would have probably been complaining about how the parents raised him further down the line. So we don't take this for granted.
We don't take it for granted. Thank you so much. We'll be leaving her details, viewers, in the description box.
Yes.
Feel free to contact her. As you can tell, she has a lot to share, a lot more she hasn't even shared. Okay, and we will try to bring her back some other time to tell us some other things. There were some things she was talking about that we need to bring down a bit. Okay, so we'll be doing that. But feel free to hit her details in the description box, and just get on.
Absolutely. And subscribe to their channel as well. We look forward to seeing you guys again.
Relationship Builders Forum. So thank you. And do give our love to your husband who failed to ask us thank you birthday. And the young man.
Yes.
The young man who is shaping you as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's been a privilege having you here, and we appreciate it. We do not take it for granted. And to viewers, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it if you're new to our channel, Foundation for Family Affairs. We hope to see you on the next one. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Bye.
Bye.